Hey guys, how are you doing? This is Zed from Zed Outdoors. I hope you're having an awesome day. So I am in the beautiful county of Dorset at a location called Carve Camping, which is a very famous location. It's actually appeared on TV. They do some amazing stuff here, a lot of greenwood tutorials, workshops. They've got some fantastic yurts and an amazing treehouse that has been appeared on TV and across media. And I'm here to join a very good friend of mine who's also one of the instructors here, Adam Hawker. Adam, how are you doing?
I'm very well, sir.
Excellent stuff.
How are you?
I'm doing really well. Adam is a very good friend of mine. We've known each other for a while now. And he's one of the people I look up to most in this kind of green woodworking, spoon carving community. A very humble guy, a very talented guy. And actually one of the first times he's appeared on video actually teaching his spoon carving. So in this video, I'm down in Dorset for a few days to see some friends, including good Adam over here. And what Adam has very kindly allowed me to do is to come and do a video with him where he's going to be teaching you how to carve a spoon. Up until this point, Adam hasn't really shared that on a very public level before, apart from private workshops. I'm very honoured that Adam has invited me down to do that. Now what we're going to do, this video is potentially going to be a bit of a long video because obviously there's a lot of steps involved. But the idea is with this video is that you're able to take what Adam is teaching and following it regardless of what level you're at. All the way from an absolute beginner that you've never picked up a knife and carved a spoon before, all the way to the advanced and everything in between. So what we're going to do, we're going to break this video up into a few sections. The first section is I really want to show some of Adam's work and the beautiful spoons that he produces, so you can see the kind of quality in which he works to and the standards that he has. And then what we're going to do, we're going to get straight into the flow, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. And so what we're going to do is going to go into wood selection and then work our way through. So needless to say, I'm going to put a link to all of Adam's stuff down below in the description. And so, without further ado, with Adam's kind permission, let's get straight into this video where Adam Hawker is going to teach you how to carve a spoon. So Mr. Hawker.
Yes, hello.
Let's look at your beautiful work over here. Now, a lot of his stuff actually gets sold straight away. So this is a small selection of the many spoons that he carves. So Adam, just talk me through a general, do you have a particular style that you're kind of known for with your spoon carving?
Well, yeah. I suppose a lot of the time I like to play around with sort of asymmetric bowl shape, so maybe that could be a label that I might be tagged under, and possibly the coal rosing.
Okay, and the coal rosing, actually a bit of a teaser there, because we're potentially, if we have time, we're going to record another video which is to show you how to do this technique here, which is called coal rosing. So coming back to the general spoon design, I think it's these kind of shapes you're talking about, aren't you?
Yeah, the asymmetrical bowl shape, which really it's functional, but the reason for it is so that the particular shape fits the shape of a bowl. So when you're eating out of a bowl with your right hand or your left hand, that shape will suit the bowl, the shape of the bowl here, so you can come around the inside of the bowl perhaps.
So there's basically a reason for that symmetry then? Asymmetry.
Yeah, I guess so, and there's probably other reasons which I'm totally oblivious to.
I know, but you could pretend to know. That would always work.
Yeah, it makes good for scratching your back, maybe.
That's it. If you've got a really short back, you can short
fat back.
That's it. That's the middle-aged syndrome, isn't it, that one? So here we've got these spoon carves I love. Your short stubby eater, aren't they, these ones?
Well, that is actually in mind for coffee or something like that.
Oh,
so
nice.
A little food scoop or something.
Oh, interesting.
Along those lines.
So as you can see from Adam's work, it's very kind of diverse, but he's known for these beautiful shapes and contours that he do. So Mr. Hawker, one thing I like what you do in your day-to-day teaching is you have the actual process laid out here in these templates, don't you? So as a quick walkthrough, obviously we're going to go through the practicalities of actually doing it, but starting with stage one, what are you essentially doing here?
Well, with stage one, the first stage really is to make the crank of the spoon, so i.e. where the spoon comes down an angle, because the bowl generally should be lower than the handle to make it ergonomical and comfortable to use. So that's potentially what we're doing to start with, is creating say, the first profile, which is our crank.
Right, gotcha. So that is in stage one. I noticed in stage one as well, you're marking it out once you've done that, haven't you?
Yeah. So I'm literally creating a flat surface when I create the crank, which I can then draw the spoon shape on.
And then the rest is obviously, you know, profiling it down more and more, basically.
Yeah, I tend to work quite methodically. So you notice the ends of the spoons are kept square for quite a while, rather than kind of grabbing that instant urge to start rounding things over and make the spoon into a spoon shape straight away. So much like a sculptor, you perhaps work in 2D first,
Right.
before going over to knocking the corners off and making it 3D.
Gotcha, I understand.
So yeah, I tend to use this methodical process, and I find it's quite good for beginners, because it's very basic. You know, it's set out in a series of steps. And this really I made as a teaching aid for when I'm teaching. If you know I'm busy or something teaching, and someone wants to know something, they can come over and have a look for themselves.
Gotcha.
And perhaps, find out where they are, what's to do next.
Perfect.
So my method of carving is pretty much like this, even when I'm not teaching. I do things slightly different. So today I think I'm going to show you how I would teach a beginner to put a crank in a spoon, and then I'm going to show you another way to put a crank in a spoon.
Perfect. So what we'll do then, we'll get the wood selection sorted, and shall we begin?
Yeah, let's do that.
So we have selected a beautiful piece of birch here, Adam.
Yeah, it's very fresh, full of sap. Well, the sap's actually rising when it came down.
Right.
It was coming out after I cut it. So once we've got a log, what we're looking for is, hopefully I want to get 2 spoons out of each half here. I want to have a look at the orientation of it and see where's nice and free from knots to basically sway my decision as to which way I split the piece of wood. So predominantly, I'm not too worried about too much knots in the handle, it's more so the bowl. So here we've got quite a clean section this side, it's a bit knotty there. So it's reasonably clean there. What's it like at the other end, maybe?
So are you looking at the pith and the alignment with the outside as well?
Well, that as well, you know, it depends on... There's many different ways of carving a spoon out of a piece of wood.
Right.
The wet method I tend to use quite a lot is tangentially as opposed to radially. So radially would involve splitting the log in half, and then a wedge, and effectively making your spoon out of the wedge, so the grain's running straight, like that. The way I tend to do a lot of my spoons is I split the wood in half, and then I orientate it so that the spoon comes out of the wood that way. Right. That way you end up with a bit more nicer patterning in the spoon. You end up with the concentric rings. Cool. So yeah, and what I want really is 2 clear areas each side where my bowl is going to be. So that's not too bad. That's not too bad there. So maybe I'm looking at splitting across there. To do so, I'm going to use my axe. Is this the one you forged with Nick Westerman, isn't it? This is, yes, that said, yeah, beauty. Thank you, Nick. It was a wonderful day, by the way. Thank you very much. You are a legend. So I'm going to orientate my axe. Note here how I'm standing as well. I've got my axe. Right. I'm standing at 45 degrees to my axe, and likewise my beetle's 45 degrees. So when I split through, if it does break through and the axe has to go anywhere, it's going to go to my side, and likewise the beetle too. And I want to aim as accurately as possible in the middle. Ta-da! So there we go, we've got on 2 bits of wood. As far as orientation here, this bit here is not too bad either end for the bowl. Bit of a wobble coming through here from a knot there, but I generally wouldn't worry too much about that, and likewise this end I could probably get one out of here.
So Adam, we've got the piece, and now what are we going to do now?
Right, so as I mentioned earlier, the first thing we're going to do is axe the crank into the spoon.
Right.
What I'm going to do is show you the first method which I use for teaching, which I find very good for teaching beginners. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to use the shape of the bevel of the axe.
Right.
So this part here, this particular axe has got more of a straight ground centre bevel. Perhaps typically a lot of other axes have a slightly concaved centre grind bevel.
Right.
And what that axe actually naturally wants to do as it goes into the wood, because of that curved bevel, it wants to glance out. So we can use that glancing out of the axe to our advantage to create the crank. So I shall endeavour to demonstrate. So I'm forcing my axe to go straight in at this point, and then if I get to a certain point where I want the crank to start, then I'm going to just relax my grip on the axe and allow that bevel to just come out again. And you should be able to see just after one cut how it's coming out again. So then I'll go back to it, go in a bit further. So I'm forcing the axe to go in, and now I'm almost just throwing the weight of the axe at the wood to get that crank to occur. Obviously it's back here at the moment, so I need to push it forward to a bit. So this is quite a good habit to get into, is when the axe gets caught in the fibres of the wood, if you just twist the axe over, that will release it.
As opposed to just pulling it out? Or...
Yeah. So I'm just throwing the weight of the axe at the wood. You see I've got the handle coming down to the bottom of the spoon. Go a bit further. So I'm forcing the axe in, and now I'm relaxing.
Perfect.
See how I'm getting the crank.
So that one's done now then?
Yeah, pretty much. I could go in a bit deeper if I wanted to. Depending how much of a crank you want the handle.
Right.
Obviously with straight grain wood, if you put too much of a crank on it, then you're going to have too much short grain within the handle.
Right.
Because the grain's running straight. It's kind of why the next method is better, because you're following the grain along more, and you're kind of putting the crank in the bowl of the spoon.
Right. So shall we have a look at that then?
Yeah. So stick the bowl down this end, shall we? So here I'm just starting to put a flap going right the way down. I should point out, safety wise, you notice then I'm coming right up here almost to the end of the wood. Now really I shouldn't be doing that, and I always advise to sort of like never go much above halfway, and if you need to, turn it around and come back down.
Right.
That's when accidents can occur, obviously, especially if you're holding a piece of wood like that. Obviously I've got my fingers here and they're out the way. But I tend to do that when I'm carving on my own anyway. And when I'm doing that, I've got this leg here, this knee bent here, and dropping this knee down, and I've got my elbow tucked nice and tight against my hip here. So I've kind of got my body locked up nice and tight, and I'm being very tentative at that point. I'm not raising my axe right up in the air. I'm taking nice small cuts. Right, so I've put a flat down along there. If I want, I could put a slight taper on there, a bit more. There is a slight one already, but so it does go down slightly.
Right.
So now we're going to put the crank in the form of the bowl. So I'm going to decide where I want my bowl, so around here somewhere. And then I'm going to divide my bowl up into thirds. And then I'm going to imagine the back third. So perhaps if I kind of roughly draw it, 1/3, 2/3. So perhaps I want that 1/3 of my spoon to start there.
So you go straight down, like?
I am there just to get it started. I do that mainly as a marker for myself.
Right.
To show where the 1/3 point is in the bowl.
Gotcha.
And then I'll come down, hopefully not too far because I don't want to split this off, and then I'm going to turn the wood to its side, and I'm axing down here into that point where I've just cut into. So to start off, I'm just kind of aligning the axe, getting it aimed up before I... So you can see with this technique it does require a certain bit more accuracy than the first technique.
Gotcha.
And that's why I would generally teach that first technique to beginners. This can be quite tricky to get the hang of. And then just tidy it up. You can use the axe like a guillotine sometimes if you wish. So, you can't see it because that fluffy bit of bark there. You can now see I've got a little bit of crank in the spoon, and then when I create the bottom of the spoon I can bring the bottom of the spoon, the handle up in to the top of the handle to create more of a crank.
So Adam, now that you've got two different types of variations in terms of the billet, so what are you doing now? You're going to be drawing on the shape?
So I'm going to draw my shape on now, the profile of the spoon in that sense. So I tend to always use a centre line, just to help keep things symmetrical really. These flexi rulers are quite good, and you know you can get quite good shapes
Ah, interesting.
with them before drawing a profile on a crank like that. So I've got my centre line. I know that's my 1/3 point of the bowl. So now I can basically denote the length of the bowl. So I'm going to the top there. I can use a ruler, I can use my finger or thumb and the end of the pencil if I want to.
So that's the end of the bowl.
And that denote
Oh, that's the, okay, right.
the spoon. So I was going to say I use a formula of the same formula as most people use with, which is bowl split into thirds, the crank appearing at that one fold, the lowest part of the bowl appearing at this 1/3 point, and then the front of the bowl divided that way, and then the handle generally to get an aesthetic symmetrical spoon, you would then do the handle 2/3 the length of the bowl. But most of the time I tend to quite like doing the Swedish style porridge spoons, which have a very short handle.
Right.
Big bowl, short handle.
Is that because Swedish people have short hands? So he
Don't
wants to
know
put,
that one. I presume so.
we need to go carry out some studies in Sweden now. Measuring
I don't
people's
mind.
hands.
I'll be happy to do so. So the bowl. Now it's a case of drawing the bowl on. Again, it depends how anal you are, and how much you want to your spoon to be symmetrical. But what I tend to do here is at the 1/3 point is just mark the width of my bowl. So just so I've got equal distances. And then when I'm drawing the handle on, I perhaps just mark the widest parts of the spoon just to keep things symmetrical. So now we draw the bowl on. Symmetric or asymmetric bowl? Zed, what would you like?
I think for the purposes of the video, but also your style, you go for asymmetrical, don't you? Would you teach your students symmetrical?
Sorry?
Would you teach your students symmetrical?
Well, again, I don't like to make my students do a certain design. I'd like to give them free rein, and
Right.
I think it's a healthy thing for someone to play with their own imagination.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are limits.
Yeah.
But my students, whatever they fancy, really.
I'll tell you what, let's go for asymmetrical.
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 Okay, let's do that then. So yeah, I've marked the length of my bowl. Perhaps because I'm doing an asymmetric bowl, what I do is I'm just going to mark that as the overall length. That way, then I bring. So we'll go for a right-handed one. So I'm bringing this hand up almost straight.
So this is for a right-handed person?
Yeah.
So we're looking at, once again, the practical use of a spoon once it's done, aren't we? Hence the...
Something like that.
Perfect.
Okay, then the handle, so like I said, I mark the neck now, so I quite like to make sure I get an equal distance. So again, it's at this point here where the spoon is going to be at its thinnest. So I'm marking at the thinnest point. Then length of handle, let's do a short, shall we, let's say something like that. So the handle will be coming round here, so perhaps about there I'll mark the widest point. Sorry. So here I'm just bringing this and blending it in with the back of the bowl. This side doing the same. Hopefully getting the shoulders equal. there's the widest part. Something like that.
Perfect.
So there's quite a bit of a waste. Obviously this particular bit of birch is quite big for an eating spoon. You don't necessarily have to use something this big. Obviously something smaller in diameter you can use to get an eating spoon out of. So yeah, okay, I am producing quite a lot of wastage here with this, but
That's perfect. So that's that drawn out then.
yep, ready to go, ready to continue axing.
So Adam, we've got this all marked out now. Now what are we going to do?
So the first thing I tend to do now is bring these sides in close to each side, so the thickest part of the handle, thickest part of the bowl, and that reduces the width, so then when I start to profile the back I haven't got so much thickness,
Right.
so it makes it easier to carve. So I can come down and I'm axing at 90 degrees to that top surface that we've done. So I'm keeping this edge at 90 degrees to this
Right.
edge. Let's just knock this back corner off. Back to here. Few stop cuts help sever the grain, and I'm going straight forward there. I turn around. So here, earlier I touched on bending this knee and that brings you over the wood. It keeps your back straight. This is all very well. It's brilliant for this because I can look right down over my design and see it. Now when I turn this around, oh, I can't see it anymore. So what I do here is tend to straighten this knee up, bend this knee a bit more and drop back on it, extend my arm out straight and bring my thumb around onto the axe, and then just do straight cutting movements, and I'll just flick my wrist as I go in. Quite a good technique, bump cut. So when you get your axe wedged in, just lift the bit of wood and the axe and bump down. It's quite a safe cut. So I've brought my sides in. So now what I'm going to do is mark the thickness of my bowl, and I'm using my finger as a stop here, and I can run it straight across. That way I know when I axe the back both of these surfaces will be parallel, hopefully. So the next stage is to axe off the back of the spoon. So here, if you do a bit, stop, look at that distance there, is it equal to that distance? If no, alter the axe accordingly, take a bit more off, and use those lines as a marker, you know, to get things parallel, keep things nice and square. So here what I'll perhaps do is I just want to knock this bit off so I can come into here easier. So just turn it around. I'm going to clear my block. Really good habit to get into is clearing your block regularly.
Is this for the purposes of being able to keep it stable also, and also? Yeah,
sometimes you might get this a bit of chip or something caught on that, and you're axing away and it might move or something.
Right.
Yeah, just generally it's good to get into habits. Smoking, that's a good one. Drinking, another good one.
Driving without a seatbelt, things like that. They're all
talking
fantastic
on your phone whilst driving.
That's it.
As fast as you can.
Ringing your ex up while drunk. That's probably the best habit out of the lot.
Can't beat it. Right, turn it back around. So I've got a bit more. Now you don't have to stick bang onto the lines. Obviously the closer you get, the less work there is to do, but maybe it might not be beneficial because you might put more time into chasing those lines that could be put into carving it with a knife. So don't be too finicky. So I'm going to transfer this 1/3 mark onto the back of the bowl.
Okay.
And then I'm marking 1 centimetre each side of that. Now the reason why I do that is when I axe back down the handle, I'll start axing from that point, and likewise when I start axing the front of the bowl, I'll axe from that point. That way I don't touch this part here.
Right.
So I'm making sure that that is my highest, or my lowest point of the spoon there.
Understand. Gotcha.
That way I can.
So essentially it will taper down each end, but you're avoiding that.
Yeah, I'd save that for now. I'd start this part of the handle now, but I'm axing from that point. And before I start axing, I tend to bring myself in and get my axe the right angle.
Right.
Kind of lock my body up and then start axing. This is quite a good area to use the axe so it glances out, to get a nice crank in the back of the handle.
Right.
And just gradually work it down to a handle thickness that you're happy with. So I'd say that's plenty thick enough there. There's a little bit for leeway to mess around with there as well. So I just come just straight off the back of the handle. So see, I kind of think there's three main profiles to a spoon. So the first one perhaps being the crank, the second one the profile of the spoon, and then the third one this profile, the back of the spoon.
Right.
Once we've got all three of those in there, especially once we've gone over to a knife and we've carved our profile and that profile and this profile, the spoon's there, it's not going in the wood. It's then just a case of profiling it and knocking corners off to give it shape and everything. So I'm now ready to start axing into the bowl here now. A habit which I've gotten into, you know, I found throughout progressing, there's always little things that I couldn't get right, so I'd kind of concentrating on them. One of them perhaps is axing this way, it's fine, I can lean over, I can see it, but this way obviously it's this side of me, so I have to lean back a bit. So one thing I did was like, right, okay, whenever I start axing the handle, I'm going to get the hardest side out the way first.
Right.
So I tend to always start this side.
Interesting.
Get the horrible things out of the way. So I'm going to start axing into that crank, and I'm aiming to come into the lowest point. Here, again, there's no rhyme or reason, there's no right or wrong way to do it, as is there's no right or wrong technique to spoon carving. Everyone does it totally different. This technique is just something I've developed over the years of learning from different people, different great craftsmen, I'd say. So this is my technique I've put together from that. So I'm aiming, I tend to come in from the bowl side first and then the handle.
So for those who may be not more comfortable with this, could they do a stop cut? Would that still be
fine?
I
can do one side stop cut.
Would that be possible? So just to kind
should
of...
we do that? It's a very good point. I would normally, when I teach, do that, give my students the option of axing or using a saw to put a stop cut in. So let's do that. It's a good idea, Zed.
So Adam, one side stop cut and one side with just a plain axe.
So what we're going to effectively do is aim to put a cut with the saw down to the lowest part of the handle there.
Mm-hmm. That's one beast of a saw, isn't it, that one? What's that?
Yeah, this is a Japanese pool saw. It's very good. So I cut it down. As I get nearer, slow down, make sure I've got a level cut and go as near as I dare.
Right.
Then I'm going to come outside and make another cut
Just next to it.
down. So I've got two cuts. So yeah, as I was saying earlier, there's no rhyme or reason whether you come this way down in first or that way. I don't know, I tend to always just go down from the bowl. Okay. So having a block like this with a shoulder is quite handy. Oh look, little split, that works out well. Maybe not that well. So you see I've put two cuts. So the reason being for this is like a safety mechanism here. So if I axe too far into that,
You won't follow
then
through.
hopefully I'll just hit that, and worst case scenario it'll break off. But at least it will take all the energy out of the axe and stop it from splitting through. And likewise, if I manage to keep that there whilst axing down into the shoulder, it's there when I axe back this way. Actually, that's a little game I like to play with myself, is to try not to break it off at this point, and then try and axe from the other side without actually breaking it off as well. Axe down in. So I'm being very careful here, so I'm bringing my body in, I'm locking my body together, so if the cut does break through, hopefully my body can stop the axe from going too far. Again, I've got this little bit of wood here as a safety barrier, and this is where the bump cut's quite good. And then just gently knock that off.
So now you're doing it without the stop cut.
Yeah. So I'm going to axe in this side. So what's really important here is wherever I'm axing, I'm making sure the opposite side is supported. So if you imagine I've got this like this and I axe there's nothing supporting it, the spoon could snap. So yeah, I'm being careful to make sure it's supported, so I can start just doing a few and effectively what I'm doing is the same as what I've done there, but with an axe as opposed to the saw, and just making this gap.
So you're essentially following that bowl round, aren't you?
Yeah, I am, as I tend to, as I go with the axe, will go as close as I can, and then come down from the other side. Okay, so we've got this axed out now. The next step is to axe over the front of the bowl. Obviously I've got this bit of wood here which I don't need, so I could, if I want now, use the saw and just cut that off.
Okay.
That's just surface requirement now, and I'm going to cut it square with my centre line. I'm still keeping things square. And I'm keeping this end on because it's handy for me to hold. It's
Perfect.
My hands are out the way up there. Okay, so now I'm going to carve the front of the bowl over. So remember, I've made that mark a centimetre away from the 1/3 mark on the bowl. So I'm going to start axing from there. And here I've got this little slot in my block which I tend to use for this. And what I'm going to do is bring my axe over, align it, elbow in, and effectively all I want to do now is just go up and down in the same line, and then as I axe down, is slowly roll the bowl over. So I axe down.
So you're not rolling the axe or angling the axe?
No, I'm changing the angle of the wood and rolling it over like that. And yeah, sort of aiming to come up to the front of the bowl but not go right the way up to the lip. So yeah, that's ample, something like that. Perhaps just trim that side there, it's a little bit fatter. Right, so that's one of the reasons why I leave this nice and square, is when I'm axing the back of the bowl like this, I've got this nice flat square surface, so I'm nice and solid. It makes me even closer and tighter together, so my accuracy is going to be better. So an axe down.
Gotcha.
And now I can start taking the corners off. And again, I can roll the axe around to do that. I'm not too worried about following it precisely. And I can...
Is that your pivot in the heel?
So yeah, I'm using like a lever, so I'm just the heel and then just like a guillotine almost.
Gotcha.
So I can...
Right, understand. Is that how you make your cheese sandwiches as well? Using that axe?
Not today, I grated it today. Okay, so you can really see the shape of the spoon coming together now. One last thing I do before I go over to a knife is I just put two facets on each side of the back of the spoon here. And I tend to do quite wide flat facets, not steep ones. So I'm just axing down and then I'm rolling the spoon back towards me like that.
So when you say wide facets, as in, is it going more towards the middle? So it's like a broader, wider...
Yeah, so rather than it being really steep like that, I have it quite shallow.
Right.
One of the reasons, again, why I keep everything at 90 degrees and work methodically. So here, for instance, this is the 90-degree edge going up to the side of the bowl. If I bring this edge up close to that edge there, I then make a mistake on here, and I carve down through that mistake. Because the bowl is already coming up close to the edge of the spoon, the further I go down, the shape of the spoon is going to change.
Right.
Because that edge is already...
Gotcha.
See, if I have to bring that edge back like that, I'm taking off that edge of the spoon, so therefore it's changing the shape of the spoon as well.
I understand.
So by leaving this square, I've got room to shape the bowl a little bit in a minute. I'll put a bit more of a curve on the bowl. If I make a mistake, I've got room to carve it out. So yeah, and I don't need big steep facets to round the shape of the bowl over.
Right, gotcha.
So now I'm going to put a facet the other side, trying to match that facet. So perhaps I'll take a little bit off first. So I've taken a small bit off there, and I'll hold it up and see whether that's roughly at the same angle as the first facet I did. If it is, then I'll go in a little bit deeper. And I can also use that thickness there to get it right. So if they're the same thickness, that facet's roughly the same width as that facet, then I know things are roughly parallel. And then one facet one side, another facet the other side, turn it around. So from this 1/3 point, I can put my axe on that facet I've just made, get it the right angle, and then just start bringing it round into the shoulder, the back of the spoon. Okay, so that's all the axe work done now, so now I can cut this end off and go over to a knife. So now I'm just going to cut off the end. One thing to perhaps, I could cut across like that. Maybe I might want to look down this way just so I get the end at 90 degrees to the handle. If you want, you could. The saw is our friend. Use it to our advantage. Yeah. So now we're ready to go over to a knife.
So Adam, look at all comfy in your chair. And now the knife work.
Yeah. Okay, so what I do now is I will actually knife around the whole profile.
Okay.
Once I've done that, as I was saying earlier, that profile's done, this profile will be done, and then the bottom profile will be done. That's it. The spoon's locked in the wood then.
Okay.
And then it's just a case of tidying it up, taking the bits off that you don't want on it, and revealing hopefully a lovely little eating spoon. So it doesn't matter where you start. I've got all my little habits, and I tend to always start here and work around. There's a couple different grips you can use for doing this. We can use a thumb push, which involves holding the knife in your dominant hand, and that hand merely just holds the knife and directs it, and then using the thumb of the other hand on the back of that knife, we push using this thumb. So all the power comes from this thumb, steering, holding this hand. And again, I'm keeping 90-degree edges, and you can work around up to the pencil line or just past the pencil line. Now, this is a great grip, so we can push around like that, or another way of doing it is using the knife down here, so it's sitting in your fingers rather than the palm of your hand, and kind of grip it with your fingers, and then just purely the action of closing my hand, the knife will go away from me. So then I can use like a series of cuts around the bowl.
What knife are you using? Your particular one?
At the moment I'm using, this is a Cyril Simone blade, but I tend to use a mixture of three really. Either this one, or I've got my Nick Westman laminated Sloyd, and I've also got another Nick normal Sloyd knife, which is my preferred knife, but I have a confession to make in the sense of it needs sharpening badly, and I just haven't had time to do that. So otherwise I'd be using that. So yeah, I'm using the Cyril knife because it's quite small. The laminated Sloyd of Nick's, it seems a bit overkill for a small spoon like this. And then as I come round into the handle here, I'm going to hold my spoon with my thumb and forefinger, which makes these 3 fingers free basically, and then holding the knife in this hand facing back up my arm. You can hold it with your fist like that, or bring your thumb around to the side of the knife if you want. But then I'm going to use these 3 fingers to provide the power to the knife. That way I can come round here, and then when I get down to the bottom bit of the handle, the transition from the bowl round to the handle, I can drop right down to the point of the knife where it's much thinner in section, allowing me to get around this curve. So as I come round, I can twist.
So the whole time the knife is braced, it's controlled.
Yeah. So here I've got my finger on the back of the knife there, and these fingers are providing the power. So I'll perhaps come into that point, the lowest point. Carving direction is very important actually. So this is a straight grain spoon, so all the grains running straight along. So we have to carve downhill. So the best analogy I can think of is, imagine I've got a pack of straws, I then cut diagonally down through the straws, and then I stroke uphill. The ends of the straws will catch and try and tear up, like this. If I stroke downhill, they just lay flat, and I can just stroke nicely.
Right.
Nice pack of straws. Good pack of straws.
Until it starts purring, yeah?
So the same here. So imagine top of the hill. So therefore I can carve from the top of the hill down the hill, top of the hill, down the hill, top of the hill, down into the bottom of the hill, top of the hill, back of the hill. And likewise that's repeated the other side.
Right.
Okay, so I've started to come down into the shoulder there. Now I'm going to come from this direction down in and meet those 2 cuts up. So I think this is one of the hardest things beginners find, is this, getting these 2 levels of grain to meet up. Often you end up doing this and chasing the level of grain. I don't really have any advice for that other than practice. Reduce the thickness of the cuts, just do tiny little cuts. Now I go back to just tidying this transition up.
Now you're shaping the bottom of the handle, you're going downhill.
Yeah, because that comes out slightly, it's the widest point there.
Right.
So that would theoretically be the top of the hill.
Gotcha.
Then so what I tend to do this is I've come down flat and straight across, because that's the highest point, till I'm touching the pencil line or just gone past it. Then I've got that flat edge as datum to follow then. See as I come down I'm twisting the knife. And I think, yeah, with everything, the more you do it, the more you kind of anticipate when your cut needs to come out.
Right.
If you're going too far, when to stop. So apart from the end, let's quickly do this. So this, I can come across the grain here, but be careful not to push too hard, because that will sometimes break through and you can quite easily just flick around and catch your hand.
Right.
That's, you know, don't necessarily have to go to the pencil line. If you feel happy with it, then stop there, you know. So I'm just going to bring this side of the handle in a bit because it looks slightly fatter there. So yeah, use the pencil line to get near what you want, and then it's a case of using your eye to achieve what you want to achieve. And I find as well, sometimes turning the spoon around and looking at from the back as well gives you a different perspective and might see something. But here I can see that this cut isn't quite level, so that's why it's looking slightly fatter here. If you see what I mean. No, it looks slightly better. Okay.
So Adam, all shaped out with the knife, and now you're going to be using the spoon knife.
Yeah, so I'm not actually going to do the bowl now, but what I tend to do at this point is just roughly hollow out part of the bowl, and in doing so I create these two thin strips of wood around each side, and then when I want to accentuate the bowl and put a bit of a curve on it, I'm cutting two thin strips rather than that whole width of the spoon. So yeah, it's just a quick hollow out. But yeah, so just to recap, I've gone around the profile, so the next thing I'm going to do is hollow the bowl out and then sort this profile out in the bowl, so the top profile.
Perfect. This is a swanky little spoon box cover you made yourself, didn't you?
Yeah, a little while ago. Yeah.
Very nice.
It's very handy. So, roughing it out, I'm going to go across the grain. Perhaps start in the middle. And I'm just doing tiny little cuts.
And this one you're just rolling the...
Yeah, you remember earlier about the knife grip where I had it down here in my fingers rather than in my palm?
Yeah.
If I hold it there and then close my hand, you can see how I'm getting that rolling action straight away. And I think that's a really good habit to get into, is when you start a cut, is making sure the cut goes right the way through rather than go halfway across, stopping, then going back, going to there, you hit a ridge, more pressure, you end up going like that. And this little ridge here just getting deeper and deeper, so by following through with your cut each time, you're eliminating that from happening and making it easier to cut. So yeah, I do all my roughing out across the grain. When it comes to finishing, I go with the grain. So I can come from both directions.
And this one you're actually pushing the spoon knife with your...
Yeah, I can get this finger on the back of it and just give it a little push. So I'm working it out towards the edge of the spoon. I'm not going right to the edge. Yeah, leaving a bit of a margin of 4 or 5 mil, like so. So this is actually a finishing cut which I'm using now, but I'm just using this to get into the back of the bowl there, so that I've got a nice steep edge to the back. So that's plenty. So now I'm going to basically come down and make this flat and level along there. The first thing I'm going to do is to check to see whether it's level with the bowl. And one way I do that is just to hold my knife across the 1/3 point of the bowl and then look at the level of the knife and see whether the back of the handle's at the same level, and that'll give me an idea as to whether I need to sort any twist out in the handle at this point.
Okay.
Because I've left a bit of thickness in the handles for these reasons, so that I can adjust things. This is actually slightly higher this side, but not much. So I'm going to come straight down the handle now. This is really awkward because obviously that is uphill, because it did taper slightly down at the beginning. So ideally I need to start right on the end, and I find if I just pinch with my finger and thumb and push it against my chest, I can get my knife on the end, just make that first initial cut. At this point I'm going to just check to see whether it is level. So I still need to take a little bit more off this side here. So I just angle the knife over accordingly. Yeah, that's good. So now I've got that part of the spoon is flat and at the right angle to the bowl. So now I can continue straight down. And I'm aiming just to get a nice straight smooth edge. So I'm going to stop before I get to the end there, and what I'm going to do is start to create this bowl. So I'm going to bring my knife across to the very back of the bowl, get my knife at a right angle, because I've got this centre line still here, so I can use that to get my knife blade at a right angle to it. I'm going to push and I'm starting to curve because I want to eat away the back of the bowl a little bit. and then I'm going to come from the front of the bowl back in. I tend to hold the spoon like this thumb in this shoulder, making sure it's not sticking up out of the way. And I can put this thumb here on the back of that shoulder, making sure it's not in the way. And then I can start towards the front of the bowl, take a cut, move back a bit, take another cut, and then work your way to the front of the bowl.
Right, gotcha.
So you're doing a series of steps. You're taking a little first step, next step, and then your last step. And the last step, sort of, the last cut takes off the edges of the steps as it comes down, if you like. So and then right to the very tip. This is very difficult if you're not used to it. And I also want this to be level, so I'm being quite meticulous, careful here that I want this cut to be right when I start. Look at it, see whether they're happy with. So this side needs a little bit off, more than the other. So I'm starting to get the curvature in the bowl there. So we've put that curve in the front of the bowl. So I just see little things which I want to tidy up. Now I can go back to this cut and come straight off the end. Now at this point we could move on to doing this back profile, but I tend to at this point just profile this handle slightly just to save a bit of time later. So I'm going to just do a series of facets down each side. So I'm pinching the knife like that, angling the knife over at quite an acute angle. The light in here is not brilliant for this at the moment. Light's quite important. It helps you see those shadows, and when you're doing facets like this, it actually helps you out. It highlights the areas where you need to cut. And I'll perhaps look at the back of the handle to make sure I've got two equal facets, or the angles are right. This side's slightly fatter, so I'll widen this one out a bit. Then another facet. Can you see the facets all right there, Seb?
I can, yeah.
With that light?
Yeah. No.
Yeah, and as I go to the bottom, obviously, you're just tapering those facets down. Don't know whether you can see the facets there that I've done. You know, if I wanted to be fussier, I can. Obviously, you can be as anal as you like to be, but that'll do for now. So I've got that profile sorted out, this top profile sorted out. Now I'm going to work on this back profile.
Okay.
So I've got my 1/3 point there, so I'm going to start from there. I should have a flat there, so I tend to again put my knife on that flat point and hold it flat, and then looking at the distance from the bottom of the bowl to the top of the knife, are they equal? You see, if it wasn't flat, then I know, because that gap's going to be smaller than that gap. That, before I start cutting, then that gives me an idea of whether I need to straighten this first cut up to get my bowl parallel. As it happens, yeah, that looks fine to me, so I can go flat that side, starting at 1/3 point, and I'm pushing look at the curve. Now I can bring the front up a bit into the bowl. So there's the 1/3 point there, which is the lowest part on the top of the bowl. The 1/3 point here on the back of the bowl needs to be the lowest point, or the highest point on the back of the bowl. So am I happy with that flowing curve? Yeah. That's what I'm looking for, is that nice shape, that flow. And then I can come back down the handle, and now I can sort the thickness of the handle out now. So I'm going to come back down the back of the handle into the handle there, and I can set the thickness now. So at the moment I've got quite a lot of thickness there, so I can use this what they call the chest lever grip, which if I was holding the knife facing back up your arm, I'm going to bring the knife across my chest and then bring the spoon across in front of it, align the knife from the right angle, and then I can just lever out and get these nice big cuts. They're very powerful, this cut.
You make a chicken sound while you're doing it as well.
Bark, 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 bark. Seeing Yogi Sundvis doing this, his chicken impression doing this grip is quite something.
So are you doing the middle of it or the sides of it?
I'm doing the whole width of the handle here.
Right, okay.
And what I'm looking at is this thickness to get this right.
Right.
I want it to be equal. You see here, this side's slightly thicker, and when I look at the side profile I can see it's slightly thicker. Okay, so I'm happy now with that shape.
Perfect.
So, the next stage is to start shaping the bowl, rounding the bowl over. I normally start with these two facets, and I'm going to refine them. And what you're aiming for is to get this thickness here equal, each side, and then the width of your facet equal. You can use a pencil if you like. So here I'm going to look at my thinnest point there, so that one's probably my thinnest point. That's my fattest facet. So from the 1/3 point, what I can do is use my finger as a stop, make a little mark there. The same the other side. And then the thickness, make a mark. Okay. And then now I know if I do the same the other side, hopefully these facets will be equal. Okay, so I should have 2 equal facets, and then it's a case of just
Work your way down.
work your way down.
I understand. So it's essentially using the first one as the guide. So once you get that level, the rest of it can then
Yeah, you just follow it down. And with the asymmetric spin, because the bowl curves around a bit, you just bring that around a bit.
Right.
And then bring it into the back of the handle so you can use. So as I'm cutting, I'm doing this sort of action. I'm slowly starting to bring it into the shoulder there. You can use for this side thumb. And I'm aiming to sort of get a strip down the middle. Let's say that'll do for now. So now it's a case of creating more facets, but the first thing I do is create a facet by taking that ridge out.
So essentially, by the time you finish, the facets are running from the top to the bottom.
Yeah. And you know, you can spend a lot of time on this, getting the facets looking perfectly straight and everything, or not, whatever the preference be. So here I've got those facets, then those, and then the central one. So we've got 5 there altogether. So the next one, again, we can use the pencil if we want to keep it even. Maybe I'll just go to there. Okay, so now I can start the next 2 facets. I can bring this one around the front of the bowl. So here we need to start bringing the back of the bowl into the shoulder. So as I come around, I need to sort of go in and then out to give the back of the bowl definition. And I'm not going right to the centre here.
So this is where the facets meet.
Yeah, so it's then, well, oops, it's then bringing them around so they blend into the handle, and so see how I'm trying to leave like about a 2mm flat all the way down the spine.
Right.
So now what we could do is the next facet, and this time I'm aiming to come up to nearly to the edge, but I'm leaving a margin there
Right.
of 1.5 mm, 2 mil, something like that. So I'm bringing this facet around and working it up to that edge that I've left, which is like 2 mil or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then at this point I can start blending it back this way, so knife over, and as I come towards me there, I'm starting off sort of 45 degrees. As I come into the shoulder, I'm dropping the handle and bringing the knife up into that cut. And again, see, I want to continue this margin all the way around the spoon. You can and then work back from this way.
So Adam, you've done the facets on the bowl, the neck.
Yeah, so I've blended the facets into the neck. Now I'm just going to sort of blend the back of the handle to the neck. So
So you're just trimming off the edge.
yeah,
End of it.
just give it a little, yeah, nothing. So I've just done that. Just put a flat on there. Okay, so we're ready to go over to the bowl now.
Excellent.
So I'm going to draw the bowl now. So I'm going to set the thickness of my rim. And here, the front of the bowl I'm going to make slightly wider. So obviously it's the bit of the spoon which sees all the action. So we're going to just give it a little bit of strength by making it slightly wider than the sides. So it's not much, just ever so slightly.
Gotcha.
So now we're going to go across to finishing the bowl now. And I'm going to start by roughing it out to near depth. So I'm going to go across the grain again. This time I'm going right to the edge. And I'm coming across nice and shallow. So again, I'm roughing the bowl out, so I'm going across the grain. It's much easier to cut, much quicker to always rough out going across the grain.
And you're going from line to line, yeah, ideally.
Yeah, straight across the bowl. And I'm feeling so I get the right thickness. Now obviously an eating spoon is much better if it's shallower.
Right.
Yeah, if it's too deep, you're going to go to get into the bottom of the bowl. So we want to always have that at the back of our mind, that we don't want to go in too steep, say at the sides of the bowls. Okay, so I'm coming down to what I feel is pretty much my final depth there. I could perhaps go in a bit deeper. Yeah, so there's good. That's my final thickness. So now before I go any further, I'm going to just work on getting the back of the bowl finished. So I'm now doing finishing cuts. So I'm working from the centre around to the side, centre around to the side. And here I can use my finger as like a pivot and just twist the knife like that.
Right.
And by going around the grain and straight down it, you can see how I'm getting a much nicer finish than going across it.
Mm-hmm. So you're really just polishing the back of it first, aren't you?
I wouldn't, well, yeah, if your blades are sharp enough, depending on the wood, this is birch and it's very fresh, wet birch. So it is actually quite fluffy, so I'm not getting a super polished finish.
Right.
If I was to say let it dry a little bit first, then I'd get a much better finish. But to be honest, for it being wet, this is good enough finish. What we need is to finish it and then find the most mythical yak beast and use its toenail to burnish the bowl with.
Gotcha. And would you kind of then oil it with the tears of a unicorn?
Yeah, most definitely.
If you can't get hold of one, then I'm sure Amazon might do one.
We'll have a look tonight.
Prime, free delivery.
Okay, let me just get rid of these bits here so you can see what's going on a bit. So you see how, oh, there's still, he says, there's still a lump there. But that's, the back of my bowl is finished.
Right.
So now I'm going to continue roughing out, and now I've got that final depth and shape there. I can use that as a gauge, so I can hopefully follow it with the hook knife, matching that curvature, and work forward, continue to rough out to that curvature. Just look at the light, see how thin it's getting. Birch is quite deceptive, I find it. It's almost transparent, so you think you're really thin, but you're not. It's just that it lets so much light through. Okay, so I've done around the back of the bowl. I've roughly thinned the front down. Now I'm going to start doing finishing cuts. So again, I'm going to start near the top.
You're still going up to the line, aren't you, on the edge?
Yeah, so I'm doing the two sides first, and then I do the centre. So I've still got a bit of thickness in here. So I'm trying to just get rid of that little bit of thickness here. So as I come down I can blend in easier. Just get this edge. And then come down the centre of the bowl.
So you're checking for thickness, yeah?
Yeah, any lumps and bumps, any fat spots. So this birch is quite damp, so ideally I'd like to let it dry before going right to this.
Right.
See how I'm struggling. The grain's still a bit fluffy.
So Adam, that's the bowl done then, and so you're essentially going to leave it to dry now.
Yeah, I think so, because it is a little bit fluffy. I'm struggling to get finished, but for the sake of camera, I think what I'll do is I'll do my last finishing touches,
Okay.
which involves basically putting a chamfer all the way around
Right.
this edge and a tiny one on the inside of the
Okay.
bowl. I get a tiny little bit of grain tearing there, so just come back that way.
So essentially these are now where the two meet up.
Yeah,
On
literally
the top.
just putting a bit of the chamfer on the rim of the bowl.
So you're following the same contour ideally all the way around.
Yeah, sometimes this section here you kind of have to blend in a bit easier, but I tend to taper the chamfer off into that. Here you can do stuff like so. As I go into that, I'm dropping the knife, changing the angle. To get that curved facet on the end. Like that. And then I'm going to just take the edge off this bowl, just so when you're using it you don't get the two corners there, that sharp bit catching the lips.
Right. So this one you're choking up to the blade, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, I tend to hold my knife, hold the blade, not the handle. It's safe. I can see how hard I'm pushing against there, and it's not going to cut me. The moment I move my thumb up and down, that's when it's going to bite you. So don't be afraid of holding the knife up, choking it up around the tip and stuff. Just don't go moving it around too much. And so I'll start here at the back of the bowl. So that's essentially the spoon finished.
Right.
That's one thing I could do if I want to, is a little bit of decoration purely for aesthetics. Maybe a little nick in the back at the top of the handle here. So tiny little detail. Two tiny little nicks, but they're very effective as, livening the spoon up a bit. So there we go.
So essentially now, just two things I want to very briefly cover is drying. What do you do in terms of drying your spoons? Do you...
I tend to just chuck it to one side now and leave it. It won't take long. That's not very thick at all. That it's probably 1.5 mil, maybe 2 mil. If that, so that will dry. The weather now, this nice sunny, glorious summertime weather.
Yeah.
That'd dry within a day easily.
Right.
So a couple of days. I don't go putting it in a nice brightly lit windowsill or in a drying box or anything like that.
Right.
We don't want to shock it so it dries just like that. We want it to dry naturally if we can. But yeah, it's surprising once it's finished how quick a spoon will dry.
And so once dried, you will then do a few finishing cuts to refine the...
If it needs it, depending on the wood. Something like birch it's a very soft wood. It can be, the wetter it is, the fluffier the grain is. So it definitely needs drying a bit before finishing. Something like hawthorn or fruit woods, because it's got such tight grain, I find I can go start to finish in one go.
Right.
You end up actually with this lovely polished, burnished
Right.
surface, so you don't generally have to worry about
Right.
drying it too much.
And then lastly, oiling. Your thoughts on oiling?
Again, it's personal preference. There is argument, don't need to oil as long as you're using really sharp tools. You know, those sharp tools are actually burnishing over the very tips of the fibres
Right.
and almost polishing it anyway. So is there a case for oil? No,
Yeah.
not necessarily, but it's a personal thing. I tend to just literally just give it one coat of raw linseed oil,
Right.
give it a good rubbing in, and then let it cure. I find, if you soak it too much, then after a while the oil can almost bleach back out of the wood.
Right.
So I wouldn't recommend over soaking it either.
Right.
But generally one coat is enough if you want to. Two, but let it dry in between. It has to cure in between.
Perfect.
But yeah, spoon.
And there you go, guys, that is a wrap for this tutorial. Now I know it's a very long tutorial and subsequently a very long video, but as you can see, having watched this all the way through now, there are a lot of steps I didn't want to miss out. But this is a very rare opportunity to see Adam carving from start to finish and his entire process. And once again, you can take whatever steps you need. For example, the facets, we were just talking about the facets of screen, where if you just want a more smoother finish without the facets, you were saying just to keep taking the corners off.
Yeah, to knock the corners off of the facets and just keep knocking corners off, and you'll effectively end up with just a carved bowl with smooth edges, no straight lines.
Yeah. But at the same time, you were saying, aesthetically, it doesn't make a huge difference having the facets.
No, I don't think so. I mean, it is more of an aesthetic thing. It's not uncomfortable to use. So, there's no reason why you had to do facets.
Yeah.
They
do look
nice. It's not
though.
big and it's not clever, kids.
Yeah.
Don't do facets. No, do facets if you want to, really.
Yeah. So, but this is a style you like doing, you know.
Yeah.
You become known for also. You know.
I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think so. Whenever I see the facets, I always think of Adam Hawker's spoons and stuff. So there you go. Once again, I know it's a long video, but I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got a lot of value from it. You know, and a sincere thank you to Adam for taking the time out and for also sharing his entire process. He's taken many years and a lot of practice to kind of refine, and constantly he's doing so also. It would mean the world to me that if you go and check out Adam Hawker on his website, the link to that will be down below. You can see the other work that he's doing and also the training and etc. that he provides. I would also put a link to his Instagram profile, and it would mean the world to me if you go and check him out on Instagram. Definitely give him a follow, and you'll be able to see his daily progress of everything else that he's up to. He's becoming quite active now on Instagram, so you'll be able to see a lot more of his work and also engage with Adam too. I'm also going to put a link to this location that we're at as well. It's a beautiful location. You've got to be here to kind of really appreciate how stunning this location is, and it would mean the world to me if you go and maybe check that out also. And once again, thank you, Adam. I really do appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Nice to see you again.
You too as well, man. I'm having a great time here in Dorset.
It's fun.
Yeah, we're in beautiful weather. The birds are singing. We've been pouring lots of tea, drinking lots of tea, haven't we?
Yeah. Well, it's only right.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah, not to.
That's it. When in Rome, as they say. So, as always, I really appreciate you watching. Thank you to Adam once again. And please go check the links out below. Give Adam a follow. You can check out the location out there also. And if you have any questions or queries, you can put them down below as well. And once again, as always, from Adam and myself, I hope whatever you're doing, you have a blessed day, a blessed week ahead. This is Zed from Zed Outdoors. Peace out.